Welcome to FacingMelsMusic.com podcast, featuring some of the most heartwarming stories from musicians all around the world on FacingMelsMusic.com.
So a very warm welcome to Facing Mel's Music. This is Mel Golding, and I have a wonderful guest. Welcome, Hoss. First of all, you go into Hoss.
Thank
This
you,
is a
Mel.
great
Thank you for having me.
and
Thank you.
multiply talented, over 20 years experience, I believe. So you are wearing several hats here. The founder of Funktasy Records, it's a label, and you also have an online magazine as well, which is really interesting. I'd love to talk about that. So,
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. And a great show, by the way, and a great personality. So it all goes together, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, well, I've got questions and stuff that we can talk about, but I want you to feel free just to throw in there things and, that you want to say. I mean, we were just having a nice secret little chat before we started recording about George Michael and Michael Jackson and all the greats from the 80s, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Reminiscing on that era. I mean, do you miss that era? Because I know I do. I'm an old-fashioned kind of girl.
Well, I was a little bit, but definitely, I'm in love with electronic. I love all sorts of music. I'm in love with electronic music. Just big side of me loves electronic music. And the whole emergence of synthesizers, the fashion. There's just something about 80s that I don't think will ever die. And it just be recycling itself, whether it's the 80s fashion, the 80s music, the 80s vibe, the 80s, just everything about the 80s, It's just, I think, it was sweet, yet wild. That's the best way I can say it,
Yeah, as in there was a lot of freedom, wasn't there? Just a lot of freedom, and I just felt that the times were different as well, just openness. I don't know. That's me just being old-fashioned. I don't know. But yeah, most definitely. Hoss, how did you get into music? How did you start? I'm interested in how you started.
Well, I was born in Iran, so the first quarter of my life, I lived in Iran, and it was actually in the early 80s. It was the Iran-Iraq War. And for those that are familiar with history, Iran went from this kind of like Western country and overnight and turned into kind of medieval Islamic run country. So there was a lot of restrictions, in my early days. And music was forbidden in Iran at the time.
Right.
So my uncle, who's actually a medical doctor, I owe a lot to him. My family, they were music lovers, but he was an exception. And he had a room with a whole drum set and percussion. It was kind of soundproof. So it was illegal to even own instruments at the time. But, I got an insight into the music world. Somehow he had access to the latest, music by Madonna or Modern Talking, or, acts like in magazines such as Vogue. And I kind of had a little glimpse into the Western world with all the and my mother, she was a singer, and but not professionally. So I was exposed to music, in a non-professional manner, but it somehow grew in me. I guess I just had it in me, So that was my introduction. Then I came to Canada when I was 11. And I remember I was junior high, grade 8, and all the instruments were already assigned to different instruments. So I was the only guy with 5 girls with the flute,
Oh dear. Okay. How did that go?
Not so well. After 6 months, I switched over to drums just to be the flute drummer,
Yeah, safe.
From being a flute boy to the drummer boy.
Oh dear, that is funny. That is very funny.
So that's how it got into me. And honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a singer. Then I realized the only place I'm good at singing is the shower. And, and then I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to be a producer. And I never thought about getting to the business side of things.
Yeah.
But, that came out of necessity. That came out of, you got to do this in order to succeed. So I had my hands on a bit of, radio, concerts, live musician, et cetera. And it took me many, many years in my late 30s to understand what I really want to do. And that was producing music, concentrating on writing, and running a record label.
Yeah. Interesting, because that was going to be one of my questions: is where do you feel you're at as an artist? Because they all kind of come under that umbrella, and it feels like you've just answered that, and you had to feel your way through. Interesting thing we have in common there is also the connection with Iran. I have an Iranian uncle.
Really?
Yes, I do. Yes,
Oh, wow.
through marriage. My auntie is married to an Iranian man. Been married for years and lived in Tehran. So
I great husbands.
Yeah, well, okay. Good to keep in mind. I'm free and single, so keeping my eyes open at the moment. So yeah, good to know. Yeah, but but I do understand, and in that time, you know, I understand the difficulties and what you're allowed to do, the restrictions. So it feels like music was a bit risky, actually, for you back then.
It was, you know, like I started with an instrument called tombak, which is like basically like a hand drum. The Arabic one is called tabla or darbuka.
Okay.
And I remember like my first visit back to Iran was 1993, and the music instruments were still illegal. So I managed to find one in the black market, and I kind of wrapped it with my jacket in the suitcase. By the time it got to Canada, there was a few bumps and bruises on the instrument.
Shame.
And I actually had it till a few weeks ago till I got rid of it. I gave it to some kids as a gift, you know. But I'm just saying, it was hard. It's not easy, you know. So and right now, as a label, I do sign a lot of artists from countries that don't have the best resources, you know.
Fantastic.
You know, and I would love to give them a chance. You know,
Yes.
when we sign artists, it's not, hey, your demo sounds great right now. It's what you envision and what we envision together as an artist and a label. So right now, we just signed a gentleman from one of the African countries. I don't know the name of the country, I forgot. But with minimal resources, with minimal equipment, he's delivering something that touches the heart.
Wonderful.
So I personally took over his project, and I'm guiding him to deliver the utmost, highest quality of recording possible with his equipment, and you know, directing his way to get that quality of sound that he desires. So,
Wonderful.
you know, as a label, I come from that background, and I don't want people to miss opportunities because of lack of resources.
Well, that was going to be another question. You've answered it for me. Basically, where has this passion been fueled? Where's it come from, this passion to actually help? It's sort of, you're looking at underprivileged, and you're looking at kind of financially underprivileged to be able to afford the fees and that. And I was wondering where that actual feeling, where that came from. And I think you've just more or less answered it. You've experienced something yourself.
You know, music, number one, has got to touch the heart. It's got to touch the soul. And yes, getting it to a commercial level where where, you know, all of us can benefit individually or as a team financially. Yes, it will help us to put better music out there. But for me, music has always been not a source of income, not a financial reason.
No.
It's just been for my soul's pleasure, for my inner self's pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, I believe I'm not looking for awards. I'm not looking for multi-million streams or multi-million dollar deals. For me, you know, I have my music playing on the radio next to some A-list artists. And for me, my dreams have come true. And, you know, that's what I want to get out there with Funktasy. It's not about getting, you know, multi-million hits.
Yeah.
It's about self-pleasure. It's about achieving your inner goals. So that's the way I look at it.
Wonderful. Yeah. And support. And it sounds like you're supporting, because I read somewhere about the support that you're giving to artists who want to make it. It feels like you're there to try and support their dreams and their goals too.
Absolutely. Like I said, you know, like we're not a major label that can offer like $1 million advances or anything like that. But what we can offer is our expertise, our professional view, our professional ears, you know, and shape their music and mold music to sound better, to its highest level of quality. And that's it's about clear, transparent communication with our artists. So we don't promise gold and silver, but we promise delivering their songs with the highest quality to as many outlets as possible, and try to make that long lasting. Because, you know, they say you can't have a hit with one song. You got to write 400 songs to have a hit song, right?
In there, yeah.
Help them with 399 of them, and then the 400th one is going to be the hit song.
Yes, hopefully, yes. So you've got a roster of acts. You mentioned 40. Is that right? Did you say 40?
Yeah, we're over 40. I think we're about 43, 44.
It's going up.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We sign an act like we sign about six to nine artists a year, usually.
Okay.
It's just because I don't want to sign too many artists, because I myself and a couple other guys had been with me for the past few years. We work closely with the artists. So it's something more than we can handle if we have, like, let's say 9 artists.
That's great.
Artist is releasing about 3 to 5 tracks a year.
Yeah.
So that's a few albums right there, per producer. So
yes, absolutely.
Handle.
Yeah, yeah. How do you find them, or do they find you?
That's a good question, because I put a lot of so the record label I started 2010. That's when I gave up everything. I sold my business and I said, I'm going to be a full-time musician. Then I sent my music out to different record labels and I got nothing back. I'm like, what the heck do I do? So I'm like, it's 2010. There's websites. Maybe I can make a website and just release my music under that name. So a couple of guys joined me, that label. And I remember my original logo. I mean, I love our logo right now, but before that, it was like a picture of a pomegranate with red headphones that I took with my BlackBerry at the time. It was horrible, but it did the job,
Got to go through logos to get to the right one.
2017, fast forward 2017, I decided to make a career out of the record label. I realized I wouldn't be the rock star that I aimed to be. So we incorporated the company. I gave ourselves about 10 years to compete with major labels out there. We're in our 5th year right now. And so the hardest part was, how do I get new artists? Exactly. How do I do that? So that's where the idea of the magazine came in. I'm like, okay, the magazine was initially a blog. I'm like, so I read something about SEO. Hey, we can be on the Google, etc. We can get more exposure. I didn't have a lot of money to spend on advertisements, So that's when the whole magazine, it initially was a blog. So I found a few writers, I put them on my payroll, etc. And the magazine took shape. One article after another, the presentation, I would open up Rolling Stone, see what we lacked in the presentation and try to, match up the presentation of the website. So it turned into a little magazine and we started driving a lot of traffic to the website.
Right.
So people started submitting their demos. So right now, I don't have problems getting demos. It's just getting quality demos.
Okay.
We get tons of music. We listen to every track we receive. We reply to each one of them, even if we don't sign them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how we receive demos. It's through the website. I believe we have built the foundation. There's a steady amount of music coming in, and we appreciate it, and we listen to it, and we respond to all of it.
That's fantastic. So it's through the magazine, isn't it interesting? And it ties in with the label. And there's something also about the fashion. Tell me a little bit about how fashion ties into it, because there's something I read about fashion. We mentioned in our secret conversation before we started recording about music and fashion. It feels like they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't have a fashion show without music, right?
Absolutely right.
You're not just going to do the catwalk.
On your own. That must look weird. Great.
You got to have some Right Set Fred. Remember Right Set Fred?
Well, you haven't seen me on a Saturday night, really.
Oh, my God. All right.
Doing the catwalk on my own. No, I'm kidding. So how does that tie in? How does that tie in?
So fashion on its own deals with the musical trend of the day, right? So, for example, music, it can go from rock for a couple of years. Most of the top 10s in the top 40, top Billboard top 40 could be rock genre. The next 3 years, it could be hip hop. The next 2 years, it could be EDM sounding. And I think fashion always keeps an eye out on that, right?
Right.
So hip hop is the happening thing right now. We're going to see a little bit more of clothing and fashion line that caters to that genre.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And also, nowadays, in the past decade, we've had artists such as Jay-Z with their rockaware. We've had Kanye with his clothing line. We've had J-Lo with her clothing line. So sometimes the musicians become the designers or work with other designers.
Interesting. What's shaping what? I wonder. It's all about
Exactly. So there's no formula.
Yes, that's very interesting. Never really thought about that. And I've certainly not had a conversation with anybody about that. But it's great you've got your eye on that, because that's a whole other market, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you could look at it, as a way to just purely for income, or you could look at it, as a study case. How is one affecting the other?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And that's why, like I said, the reason why we have our magazine is music and fashion and all things in between. That's our slogan.
Yes.
So they all go hand in hand. And I don't think you can have one without the other.
And do you I take it's probably a silly question, but you must promote your artists, the ones that you have signed, through the magazine as well. Do you provide interviews and promote them through the magazine as well?
We do, select artists, but for some reason, that's something you and I were talking about, the mentality of artists and the hardships they go through.
Yes.
Not all the artists would like to be in the spotlight.
Yes.
Right? Some enjoy it, some hate it. So we don't pressure anyone, but we do welcome everyone to participate. So we do have select few that are comfortable with it, but we don't like to enforce anything.
That's wonderful.
You got to do everything at your own liberty, at your own, with your own free will.
So do you experience, not you personally experiencing, but do you witness with your artists anxieties around this and nerves or mental health issues or wellness, or 100%. Do you experience? Yeah.
100%. I mean,
okay.
Let's go back to the 80s, right? There's no such thing as singles. If there ever was a single, artist was releasing a single, it would just be prior to their album. And that single was part of the album. So an artist would go in the studio for 6 months, finish an album, do a few interviews, a photo shoot, go on a world tour, right? Now, every day you have to promote yourself as an artist. Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, TikTok, and every day you have to be, in the eyes of others, you have to be perfect.
I know.
That takes a toll. You got to have a monstrous persona. You got to have a lot of self-confidence.
Yes.
You almost have to be, excuse my language, but cocky bastard.
Absolutely right. 100%. Yeah.
Go out there and, nobody's perfect. You could have a pimple on your face. You could have I don't know, anything. You could have not got much sleep. And, people do leave negative comments, etc. And all of this takes a toll.
Right. And you've seen this. Yeah.
Musicians are not models. Let's face it. Musicians are musicians. They're creators.
Yes.
So to ask them to be models, to ask them to go out there and sweet talkers or be funny or be entertainers, that's why we call them entertainers, not musicians.
Exactly.
Models, not musicians. But we're expecting our musicians to be entertainers and models. That does take a lot of toll.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who was I having a conversation with recently? And I said, you've actually got to not care, not give a monkey's, really not care, to have that personality that just breaks through all that crap that you're talking about, negative comments, to really not care. You've got to have that attitude. And that almost doesn't, it sort of kind of portrays you as not being human. But of course you are human. And even when people do successfully have, successful artists have that kind of front, there is a human in there that is being touched somewhere by this, is being affected by this. And it can manifest in other ways, maybe privately or maybe even publicly, So it's important that this is where I'm a real, advocate for this, to look after mental health whilst you're in the process of developing an artist. That is so important. You're carrying, not only are you developing their artistry, but you're developing them, you're getting them ready for being an artist. their mental health. You're protecting mental health and preparing them for the eventuality of this might happen, that might happen, that might happen, you know, and in fact, it's very likely to happen. Expect it, almost go overboard with it. And this is how you combat it. This is how you deal with it. This is kind of where I want to come in with coaching and counseling for artists, you know, because it's about preparation. You know, it's emotional, mental, psychological preparation, all of it.
And I thank you for that. You know, honestly, from the music community, I thank you. You know, honestly, on behalf of the music community, because no, seriously, like I told you prior to starting this interview, we had a little chat, and I said this is a subject that's not discussed much. It's the elephant in the room, you know, and it's great to see professionals and caring individuals such as yourself, you know, give a hand to the community and help them, you know, all that's needed to help them portray their music, their talent, and get over this anxiety.
Yes, because you also never know what's going on in their personal lives either. You know, personal lives can be quite problematic, you know, and if you're younger, you've got some, you know, issues with families or partners, and you never know what people are coming from. So when you're in performance, that's all kind of taking a back seat, but it's still there and sitting there. So it's kind of being sensitive to that as well. Those issues.
Mel, even I believe most artists, not just musicians, artists, you know, in general, even if they had the coziest, you know, upbringing, because of their choice of career, they, you know, they've been bashed one too many times.
Oh, yeah.
I come from a great family, but in my family, you know, the only vision was academics. And it's still, you know, my mom would still like me to do my PhD, you know, but
yeah, I'm trying to do that, but
no, so I'm just saying, like, even there was no abuse or no rough etc. Just sometimes the choice of career, you know, makes you the black sheep in the family.
Yes, I understand. Yeah,
so that puts another heavy weight, you know, on the back of these individuals.
Okay, right. So you experienced some of this then. Some of this, like academic.
Yeah. Because you know, the hardest thing for any artist, you know, regardless of you're a sculptor or a musician or a model, is to give up everything and say, this is going to be my career. I'm going to go through many nights of, you know, craft dinner because you're out of money. You're going to go through many nights where your friends tell you, hey, you're making a wrong decision. Maybe you need to get an office job. Maybe you need to do this. Maybe you need to work behind a desk, whatever it is, you know, and people are going to decide for you what's right because you're not succeeding. And the moment you succeed, everybody says, we knew you could do it.
Oh, I know. Please don't plug me in on that one. I know. I've heard all of this. It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. Or who crawls out of the woodwork, as someone put it to me once. You know, you'll be amazed at who's crawling out of the woodwork. So yeah, exactly. But it's a risk, but it's fueled from passion. And the reason I highlight this, also particularly with you, is because there's passion behind your company, and I wanted to highlight that. There's good intention, there's support behind your company, and I think that's really important. It's a wonderful quality. You know, it's deeper. It has more meaning than just simply making music, putting it out. Just as you said before, trying to make money, getting famous. No, there's some support in there. There's some love. There's compassion and understanding.
Musically, we try to make it musically intimate. It's not an assembly line. You know, we're not just popping music one after another out. You know, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Every song we put out there, it might not be a number one radio hit, but it will be everlasting. And that's what we try to achieve. Number one is the happiness of the creators. And number two, you know, we try to get it to become a successful track or album as much as we can. There's no guarantee, and the market and you know, the music market is oversaturated with not so much of a good music.
Yes.
And one thing that I have found out, you know, and I would actually like to let other musicians know, back in the days, a few years ago, if you released a track and it didn't do so well in the first 3 months, everybody say, that's it. It wasn't a good track. But what I have found out, looking at charts, looking at stats, etc., it takes time for music to surface out.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't give up. Don't expect magic. I myself have songs that I released 3 years ago, and I just found out 2 months ago they made it onto some radio stations, for example.
Mad, isn't it?
Take time. There's no expiry date on music anymore. When you listen to Spotify, you don't check the release date.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So is it a good song or not? That's all that matters.
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% with you. But it's important that you say that. And thank you for saying that and highlighting that for the younger people who will be listening and watching this. It's important because it's about self-confidence. It's about self-esteem. It's about self-belief. It's about believing what you're doing, And like you say, I've also written stuff 15, 20 years ago. They stand today and they still need to come out in a big way. And you have to hold on to that faith and that belief that actually, I still believe it's going to happen, because otherwise you lose the passion drops, and then mental health can decline as well also. But you're absolutely right. It takes time, doesn't it, to surface. It takes time to get into the system.
You mentioned the right word, belief.
It is belief. It's self-belief.
You got to believe in your beliefs. And
yes.
And once you do that, it's not about time. It's not about, like who said what. It will happen if you believe in your beliefs.
Yeah. So we're touching really here on a lot of faith. And it's really hard being in an industry that is constantly full of criticism and full of negativity and, social media stuff, to continue having faith in yourself and to have self-belief. This is the difficulty. It's like you've got to punch through brick walls to keep going, keep focused, keep going, no matter how long it takes. It can take years, and it does take years, but you keep going. You keep going.
Music is faith. Music is religion. Music, someone can go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque, 7 times a week, 2 hours a day, and someone can play their piano 7 times a week, 3 times a day. And, I think both individuals are meditating.
Definitely.
So meditation is faith. So is music. So once you have faith, that's it.
Well, that's what drives musicians, isn't it, really? Because that's the way of expression. It's expression of the soul, the spirit residing inside and coming out in that. And it's wonderful, isn't it, when you are making music? I don't know. What's your favorite part of that? Actually, I was going to ask you about that. Do you enjoy? Because I know you write, you produce, you perform as well, you DJ. What's your favorite part of? Which one do you like the best, or do they all do something different for you?
For me, back in the days, it was like the whole aspect of production. But now, something I like about production is the magical element of producing, and that's. What I can write in this moment, I can never write it again in the same way. Yes. Even though it might be just 3 notes or 3 chords.
Yeah.
The way I put them together and I arrange them in this moment will never be the same in any other moment. Yeah. And that's what I enjoy, just capturing the moment when I write.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's why they say when you record your demo, sometimes that will be, didn't Annie Lennox do a song? And it was like literally I think she did it in the control room. She wasn't even in the vocal booth. Just, was it, Must Be Talking Like an Angel, that one. That one. And she did that song and she just literally sang it through. And I think it was 1 take and they kept it.
Was it Purple Rain like that? Like they recorded a bar or something like that?
I think so, maybe. Yeah, I know this about Annie Lennox, but it just highlights what you're saying, So, yeah, you can never capture that. So there's something about the time in which it's produced.
And another thing is, going through phases for the past 10 years, everything music production had to be perfectly quantized and synchronized.
Yes.
And, us as human beings, from the way we walk to the way we talk to the way we cook, there's always elements of imperfection, right?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have everything perfectly perfect.
No.
So I think now we're kind of going back towards having some flaws in production and music, everything to be quantized, you know? So I think that's another thing that's going to come back in the next few years. Apart from seeing, radio stations and other, aspects going through changes.
Yeah, right.
My guess is like radio stations would end up on Spotify.
Yeah. Okay.
So like I said, from the creation part of things to the delivery of the music, I think we're going to see some more changes.
Yeah. Oh, it's constantly evolving, isn't it? And it's this back and forth situation. It's funny you talk about the quantize. I had this conversation with my co-writer not too long ago. We do contemporary classical stuff. And I said, we talked about quantizing, getting things. She says she does the humanize. It's a humanizing button, I think. So it does the opposite. It sort of slightly shifts things out. Yeah. Still with the use of a computer, which is quite
I think it's gone a little bit too far, to be honest with you. One job I have, that, I don't talk about much. I do kind of like front of the house engineering for a band.
Okay.
And even with, live performances, the robotic side of things has really taken over.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel it's way too much. When I go to a concert, I want to hear some microphone just making some noise.
Yeah.
That's why I'm there. I want to see live performance.
Yeah.
I don't want to see someone lip singing, or I want to see a percussionist who can actually play the congas,
Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, we'll go through phases, but I think, as human beings, we're used to everything analog, everything with a little bit of flaw, different colors, different heights, different levels of sound. So everything and all of that in music is beautiful too.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's funny you just mentioned analog. I was going to ask you about your feelings on changing from this analog era to the digital era. You would have seen that and experienced that. How was that transition for you?
It was easy because I love technology. Don't get me wrong. I love technology, but within limits. I'm a lazy producer. I don't like to work with. No, seriously, it's true. I don't like to work with like so many hardwares and then write down on paper where the knob should be, etc. So I love the whole saving of presets and recalling them with the press of the button. That I enjoy. Yeah. But when it comes to capturing vocals and I would love, I use minimal auto-tune on my production.
Good.
That's something I don't really enjoy. I love having a guitar with the fingers moving up and down the fret, recording. I love the percussion. It's funny. My latest track is called Room for Love.
Yes, I saw.
I did that with Lady Redable. She's originally from Jamaica, but she resides in Amsterdam.
Right.
And also Wemi out of Nigeria. Now, this gentleman was another case where, he comes from an area where he's not exposed to so much facilities, etc. Yeah. He has such an amazing voice, silky voice, like Seal. And Redable, she's like the raga queen, man. What you expect from a reggae raga artist, she's at the highest level. So they had an idea of co-working together, and they asked me, hey, what can we do? So I wrote a simple beat. It was just like a piano and just drums. And I sent it to both of them, and I said, you guys work it out, and I will produce the final track. What I wanted to tell you about Imperfection, at the beginning of the track, Wemi starts the track. And I don't know if it's a microphone, but I think it was his jacket, or that he was singing, and there was this like this coming from his jacket.
Right.
Oh my God, that doesn't sound right. But when I plugged it into the project, it just gave it character. Yeah. 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 It just gave it character. I'm like, that sounds so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And, and that's probably why, when you look at the sound of the 60s and the 70s, you go further back, there was less technology and there was more room for basically these flaws, but they're not flaws. There's kind of crackles, or you listen to vinyls being played and you hear the crackles. It's the wear and tear and just the way it's recorded, this live element and even the popping, with the microphone.
Sure.
Things like this, and keeping it real, and the guitar, the finger movement going up and down the fret as well, Sure. And I've seen producers actually add it in as a sound to make it authentic,
There are producers that deliberately leave a vinyl sound, like that kind of
exactly.
On the vinyl. They leave that throughout the song, on a track. And you, as a listener, you might never consciously hear it, but subconsciously you definitely hear it.
Oh yes. I think you kind of feel it, don't you? You sense it. Maybe you sense it. Maybe it's a sense. It's tapping into sense, because it's adding the human quality, isn't it? There's a real person making this, rather than just being synthesized or, through digital stuff. So that's what we're talking about, is the human element, the human quality.
In Chef Boyardee's, spaghetti and Italian grandma's spaghetti,
Okay. So basically, it sounds like you're involved with artists in several capacities here. Mm-hmm. So you produce for artists, as in you do their production, but they front it and they do it. But you also get involved, don't you? You kind of feature together with your artists, because I've seen some other stuff in your Spotify where you're featuring, or they're featuring with you. So there's collaborations going on, isn't there? Quite a lot of collaborations.
Like for example, like both Wemi and Redebo, they submitted their demos to Funktasy.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And there's people that listen at the initial stages, and if it's good, they filter out the good music. Yeah. And then I listen,
Right.
And I try to envision the future when I listen to a demo. Hey, what can I do? Can they be solo artists? Can I remix this? Can I remake this? Can I work with them? Can I collaborate with them? So that's exactly what happened with Redebo. Like when I first heard her demo, music, I was not a big fan of, and I told her, her voice was not even at her maximum capacity, but I could just hear 3 years from now.
Yeah.
And that was 2020, I could hear 2 years from now. So that's what I envision. And that's what I offer them. I'm like, listen, I see something here. I would like to collaborate with you. And that's the beauty of running my own label. We work together, and we work with the music that we have, and we collaborate together, and we remix tracks, remake tracks, and feature, etc. So
I'd love to collaborate with you then. That's great.
We talked about it. Absolutely.
We should. We had a private chat about that before.
And but it could be a future case study, because the funny thing is I've never met Wemi or Redebo or know you in person. Yeah. And we could make a hit song together.
That's amazing, isn't it? Oh, that's when you love technology, that's when it works.
So you can criticize it all you want, but there's so many elements that, that emerge out of this.
Absolutely right. Let's talk about one of your albums. I know you've had several albums out. I've
had only one album out.
You've had one album out.
I've had one album out. I've had a lot of singles out.
Yes. Off the Richter, is that right?
Off the Richter, yeah.
Can you tell me about that, how that was formed, and what inspired? I love the title, Off the Richter. Was there anything in particular that drove you to that title?
I was young and foolish.
I knew there was a juicy story in there somewhere.
No, it was, so I grew up in Ottawa, Canada. I moved to Montreal, Canada, where I am today. And I was writing that track. Again, it was part of the learning process, the learning curve of the music industry. So at the time, albums still played a big role. And digital platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music gave a little bit more love and exposure to albums.
Okay.
I think by then I had written like 13, 14 songs in total, maybe 7, 8 EPs. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? As part of artistmanship, I got to finish an album. So again, back then, it wasn't until 2019, let's face it, I started 2010. It wasn't until 2019 that I developed my sound, signature style. Yep. So again, that album is a bit of fusion. Most of my music up until 2019 was fusion, mixture of experimental dance music, electronic music, house, etc. So that album, I'm proud that I finished it.
Great.
Is it my real sound? No, it's not.
Interesting.
But did I finish an album? Yes, I did. Because, I started with a group of 10 other musicians my age in my 20s. I'm the only one that's still making music, because all the other 9 we're waiting to produce that perfect track. And you
Right.
can never have that perfect track. So one thing, if I could tell the youngsters out there, the young fellas that are making music, don't wait to have the perfect track. You'll learn from every track you release. And that album taught me so many things.
Fantastic. That's brilliant advice. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you're spot on, of course. Of course, you're spot on. Someone talking from experience here, you know, and you have to get through those. It's like making mistakes to get to the right situation. You have to go through it, don't you? There's just no other way around it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I was blessed by being exposed to so many elements of music. You know, I was a radio host. Like I said, I did touring, I did DJing, I did writing. I even sang on my first, 8 tracks. But it in a way, it was sad because, you know what, I didn't concentrate on one thing. So it took a lot longer for me to blossom and, just realize what I'm good at and concentrate on that.
Hone in. To hone in.
I'm a producer. That's what I am.
Yeah.
I'm a guy that goes in the studio, can pick the right sounds, put them together, deliver that high, broadcast quality.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Today, I know I'm that guy. 8 years ago, I thought I could be a bass player. I thought I could be a drummer. I still play multiple instruments, but for me, that just comes in handy during production. I don't consider myself a session player, for example.
Yeah, yeah. What about a performing artist? Do you consider yourself a performing artist, or are you more behind the scenes?
I'm a very good DJ, but just not because I learned it overnight. It took me I think I've been DJing since I'm 18, so that's 5 years, right? No, I'm just joking.
Well, yes.
A couple of decades that I've been DJing, and I came up with so many I was hit with so many situations, club festivals, pubs, performing for 5 people that were drunk and performing for, 1,200 people at the club. I've had situations where the power went out. So, it made me good at what I do.
Of course it does. You have to, I can't emphasize enough. I'm so glad you brought up that sort of live experience thing. It's vital to your artistry to actually be able to cope under these circumstances. I too have experienced this, the power cut in the middle of a song. What do? It is, things going wrong, and singing in front of 5 people or performing in front of 5 people versus 5 or 10,000, as I've also done. Which one is more stressful for you?
I enjoy intimate atmospheres. I enjoy playing for 30 people that love the music that I'm playing.
Okay, right.
Rather for 30,000 people who are expecting something else.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying to sing in front of 3 people, and so much easier to sing in front of thousands. I don't know what that is. So it's something to do with the intimacy. That's very interesting. I guess everyone's different. Every artist is different.
Everyone's different,
Yeah. Very interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
But
brilliant.
You know what? They all add to that artistmanship. That they all add to your resume. So your portfolio.
Hey Hoss, I'm just looking at the picture on this album, Off the Richter. I absolutely love that photo, by the way. Looking well funky in there. You've got that nice hat on there, and you're holding. Is that a bass guitar? Is it?
No, it's electric guitar.
I see. Is it electric guitar? Okay, but it's very different to how you're presenting now. So it just goes to show this transition that you've been through.
No, for sure. It's like you said, it's a transition. We all learn and we all adapt and we all mold ourselves. Some people, I even had to change my name.
Right. Okay.
So, initially I was using my first name, which is Amir, and I was going with Amir Hoss. And we live in a sad world. It closed many doors on me, So it's true. It's reality. Let's be honest.
Yes.
We can't, brush it off under the rug. You have to face reality. And, I'm like, okay, I'll drop my name. It will detach me from certain culture or certain religion or whatever it is, and on a good note, it opened up many, many more doors for me.
It's looking at sort of commercial aspect, isn't it? What's sellable as well. Lots of people do have the name change.
I lost many opportunities because of my artistic name.
Yeah.
If my name was Joe Black, I probably would have been in a much, 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 much higher level. Yeah,
it's incredible, really.
I lost gigs, I lost shows, I lost recording sessions, I lost contracts. I did. And I was like, you know what, maybe I can pave the way. I'll keep my initial name, etc. But it backfired. At least I tried,
Yeah, it's very interesting because I'm all for being authentic and I'm all for being yourself and promoting that beautiful uniqueness that each artist has, So I'm a little bit torn about that. I do understand also it's got to be marketable as well, memorable. It's got to be memorable, especially if you're amongst other artists, because there is an element of competition there. Although I think when you're trying to develop as an artist, it's best not to think of it that way. You just do your thing. You do your thing, concentrate on your love and your passion and everything else. So very, very interesting chat. Very interesting. I'm going to ask you another thing. Okay. So in terms of the future, you're quite a visionary, actually. I mean, things that you've talked about, you're a visionary. You see a few years down the line. So what is it that you want to achieve from all of this? What's your goal for that? If you have one, indeed, if you have one.
My goal?
What do you want to achieve?
I think my last step to climb on is to be nominated for some sort of nominee. Whether it's Junos or Grammys, I think that was not close to chapter, but I'll die peacefully.
I get you. I hear you. You. Yeah.
I'm very happy, honestly. Like if everything shuts down for me, I tried. I gave it 20 some odd years of my life. I went through the hardship. I was stubborn. I was a believer. And no one, from parents to friends to, luckily I had no enemies. So, but I'm just saying, like even people that don't matter much, nobody stopped me from doing what I stuck to it. I kind of planned it. Subconsciously, I planned it. And for a guy that comes, with no contacts in the industry, no family members, no guidance, nothing, doing something at a higher level. And it's not about money, it's about achievements at the end of the day. If I leave the world, I have 70, 80 songs that I've done. I have new people that I work with. And for me, that's more than being blessed.
Absolutely. It certainly sounds like you're making your mark over there with your label and the magazine. So well done for that. That's fantastic. And you talk about support. That's another thing that I'm interested in is that lack of support as well. But you do have a little team. You acquired a team, didn't you? You acquired a team of people who now work with you on this?
Absolutely. Just today, like for example, today I had a session with 3 interns that are part of that are new members of Funktasy, and they're all
wonderful.
Eager, plus we have long-term partners and friends that have been with us, for the past. I have Aristo, he actually. It's funny, the way we met was off of Kijiji. Kijiji is similar to Craigslist, Facebook Market. I put him looking for other artists, and he joined the family since 2010. I have Nova. He's a great French hip hop artist, has been with me since 2013. Just, a lot of folks. MC Mario has been with me for about 5, 6, actually longer, 10 years. So, we built this on more than just musicians foundation, more than just friends. It's music lovers, it's people that share the same passion, the same vision, and we are comfortable discussing our ups and downs. It's not about showing off your achievements. Failures count too, So we do discuss failures and we learn from all.
Wonderful. Sounds very humble. Actually, very humble.
That's what you have to be. I mean, in some scenarios where you're protecting your music and your entity, you have to be selfish and you have to spread your feathers. But when it comes to reality, working with your teammates, welcoming new individuals or entities or partners, I think you need to be transparent, and especially if somebody does a bit of a homework in you, the truth will come out, I can't lie about our numbers or things. Everything's out there, But I can talk about the fact that we've been around for 10 years, 12 years, the fact that, we have this many number of Canadian artists or this many number of international artists just speaks for itself. So I think being humble and being transparent definitely goes a long way.
It absolutely does. And you do create a little family, don't you? And it's nice. I think you actually said that, a family. It's a close-knit, a network, you know, and it's important because that's what helps it succeed, pushes it forward, and you keep together, don't you? And it's a very important quality within organizations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and companies. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we hope to keep it that way for a long time. You know?
Well, Hoss, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
To speak with you, and you ask perfect questions, and it makes it easy for me to answer, you know, as best as I can.
Yeah, no, wonderful. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you again in the future.